Texas Lawyers Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the law firm of Abercrombie and Sanchez, PLLC. You can find us on the internet at astxlegal.com or by calling 1-888-981-7509. Your hosts are Bryan Abercrombie and Samuel Sanchez. Bryan has been practicing law for 18 years and is board certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization in the area of family law. Sam has been practicing for 13 years, is licensed in both Texas and Florida, and is a certified mediator. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and all views are the opinion of the hosts. It is not designed to provide legal advice for your particular legal matter, and it should not replace the advice of competent counsel. Welcome, and we hope you enjoy the Top Texas Lawyers Podcast. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Top Texas Lawyers Podcast. We are here hunkered down and shelter in place in Montgomery County, and I think, Sam, you are hunkered down and sheltered in place in Fort Worth, Texas. Is that all right?
I am. Tarrant County is in the same position a lot of big cities are.
And like I said, with me, I'm your host, Bryan Abercrombie, and with me, as always, is my co-host and my partner in crime, Sam Sanchez. How you doing, Sam?
I'm not doing too bad. I guess I'm your Little John to your Robin Hood, right?
I guess so. Today, we wanted to come on and talk a little bit more specifics about the COVID-19 crisis that's kind of affecting us all, and talk a little bit about how it's affecting us in the courts, and what's going on with civil cases, family cases, criminal cases. And a little bit later, we're going to bring on a guest to us a little bit about how it's affecting the criminal side of the ledger, since both Sam and I steer clear of the criminal cases. But we do have an attorney friend that does deal with criminal cases that can tell us a little bit about what's going on over on the criminal side. But let's talk first about kind of what's going on with the family cases. What do you see in your neck of the woods?
Well, obviously the stay home, stay safe orders, really taking control of the family law practice. In that most courts, while they're still accessible for what we would consider exigent circumstances, meaning that if there was a protective order needed, if it was an emergency removal due to abuse or neglect, if there was some really property matters have all kind of been pushed to the side. You can still get some emergency orders, but they're going to have to really be substantial and material to either the detriment of that particular asset, meaning that it's instantly going to diminish or go away, or it's not recoverable for you to get access to the courts. But they are still available. They're all running on fairly skeleton crews. No judges are doing typically in-person hearings anymore, unless just the rarest of circumstances. Most of them are using, the social platforms that we see out there. There's Zoom, there's Skype, there's even some FaceTime as needed, but that does require agreement on all parties for that to be used and put in place.
Yes, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a few Zoom hearings and different things like that, but that's really everything's kind of getting pushed to the back of the line, like you said. Supreme Court of Texas, for the first time, I think, on its history, I may be wrong about that, but at least from when I can remember, this is the first time that the Supreme Court has put out, and they've put out several different administrative orders concerning the standard possession order that's under Texas law, and how to deal with that. Like, for example, the last order, I believe that was the 7th emergency order regarding COVID-19 state of disaster. And that was issued by the Supreme Court on the 24th. And basically that said that just because a shelter-in-place order is put in effect for your particular county or your particular area, that does not mean you do not have to turn the children over for a visitation period. If the two of you agree to do something different, then that's fine. But you still have to follow the court orders with respect to visitation, even if there's shelter-in-place in your particular county.
Yeah, absolutely. Most, if not all of these orders are providing exceptions for, certain things. That's obviously one of them. In addition to that, I've had clients call and say, hey, can lawyers even do anything? Well, the law profession is considered an essential government function. And so that means clerks are still going to work, judges are still going to work, court staff is still going to work. And so, those are all things that are to be considered as well.
And don't let this think that you can't get relief from the court, because if there is an emergency, you can get relief, and you can still file stuff. All attorneys in Texas should be able to e-file with any particular county, so you can still e-file your lawsuit or your motion or whatever you need to file with the court. It's just the question. What's a little bit up in the air is if you need a hearing. What's a little bit up in the air right now is when you're going to get that hearing. And I think as the weeks go by, I think the Zoom hearings or Skype hearings are going to be a lot more in use.
Sure, and a big part of that is you got to understand from the perspective of the law. Look, trial hearings, these are open to the public. They're very rare circumstances that courts have to justify closing those types of proceedings. So when you remember that court proceedings are required to be open to the public under the Texas Constitutional Article 1, Section 13, and that criminal proceedings are entitled to a public trial under the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, right? In Article 1, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution, you got to understand that what we're talking about when we say a Zoom meeting, it's not like the public, Joe Q public can just dial into one of these and say, hey, I want to listen in. So, me and Bryan have touched on this before. There's constitutional, difficulties for the legal system that we're trying to work through, as an entire industry of how do we make that? How are we creating this virtual courtroom? And does it have the same provisions of physical courtrooms? Meaning, is it available to the public? Well, no, it's not typically. So, is that something that the court has to make a determination and so it's only going to be available to the public as necessary? Does there need to be specific findings in the court record? So while they're still available, understand that, for lawyers, you really want to talk to your competent counsel and have them walk through, what does this mean? If you're using Zoom as an example, as an application, you can live stream proceedings via YouTube or Facebook. Is that something that a court needs to authorize? Is it an objection that you can use if somebody is dragging you into court and you say, hey, look, you don't have a basis to be able to do this. All these things are new wrinkles in the law that.
Yes, and that's a good point. The other thing would be when it comes to documents, exhibits, things you want to present to the court or present to a particular witness as evidence. Normally, the courts like the original and they like to look at it and inspect the document before they make a ruling. And all of this, meetings online and hearings online are good, but how do you deal with it when you're talking about having to electronically show an exhibit or produce an exhibit or offer an exhibit in a potential online hearing? That's all kinds of stuff that the courts are having to grapple with right now.
Agreed. We have some clients who, have real property holdings, and obviously this has taken a tremendous effect on them because there have been executive orders that have suspended all, eviction and bankruptcy proceedings and, foreclosure proceedings. So, if you're sitting out there and you're like, what is available to me, what remedy legally can I do to ensure that my rights as a property owner, as a leaseholder, as a, renter or owner are preserved? And that really is some difficult conversations you need to have with your lawyers because to Bryan's point, courts are absolutely available. You can still absolutely file. And what you got to understand, and we've mentioned this before, is that everybody's getting in line right now, not just for checks from the government, everybody's getting in line for access to the courts if and when it becomes available and opens again, which will be in the future. So you really want to talk to them and plan it out and understand that there is some value to getting something on file and getting that relief, at least in process.
And the other thing is the courts don't want you down there, even on an emergency hearing, if you have any kind of flu-like symptoms, fever, cough, any of that stuff. They are absolutely adamant about not wanting this thing to spread because they're looking at the CDC reports and looking at everything that's coming through the news and from I'm talking about from legitimate sources, CDC and the government and things like that. And they're really trying to avoid the spread of this thing. And so that's why they've told statute, for example, they've told statute of limitations on many different types of lawsuits until after the governor's disaster declaration has been lifted. So, and who knows when that's going to be? I mean, obviously we're still, at least in my county, we're still increasing in the number of cases that are being reported every day. So, we're not even sure if we're at the apex of this thing yet, or what's going to happen. So
Yeah, or even close.
let's talk a little bit
Yeah, no.
about like the civil side. Let's say, I mean, you brought up a good point a minute ago when you were talking about landlord-tenant situations. You can look at it from the side of the landlord, and you can also look at it from the side of the tenant. I mean, both people have very reasonable concerns of what with the number of people that have been furloughed or even outright laid off from their jobs because of this thing. So let's talk first from the tenant side. I mean, if you're a tenant, let's say I'm a tenant, I can't afford to pay my rent because I've lost my job, within a day, 24 hours or 48 hours notice. And let's say I'm in the food service profession and I have no income coming in and I have no way to pay the rent. What do I do?
Yeah, I really think that you need to be, aware. Obviously, you're going to need to do a little homework. Make sure that you understand what orders are affecting you in the place that you live. These are not just statewide orders, they're federal orders, but there's also local ordinances that are being passed, emergency ordinances that are being passed by, county judges, by city councils about this process. So make sure if you have questions, obviously contact competent counsel, but do a little due diligence too. Understand that you have rights. You don't want to, if you get a letter, people are infamous for drafting their own demand letters to say, hey, I never talked to a lawyer, but you better get out because I will, or I'm going to come down and self-help and kick you out. And those are scary times, especially in a situation where you look at it and you say, I've lost my job. I can't lose my house. Where do me and my family go? And so you have rights. It may take that you have to retain an attorney. And if you're looking at it and saying, well, what if I don't have the resources to be able to obtain an attorney? These are going to be very complex situations that you just want to make sure you understand what that position is. So it may be worth, paying $175 or $200 to get a consult from an attorney that can at least give you some good insight in how best to handle a situation if it's presenting itself.
The one thing that people need to understand is with respect to evictions. The court, typically when you're going to be evicted by court order, you have to go down to the justice court and you have to get an order. There's a whole process that has to go by a notice. You have to be served, and then you have to do the eviction proceeding, and then an order is issued, and that directs you to get out, or directs the sheriff to put your stuff on the curb, or whatever the case may be. The Supreme Court has basically said that can't happen right now. No, the courts can't issue those orders at this particular moment in time. So right now, I think, if you're worried about an eviction, I think you're going to be okay, at least for the time being, because they're not issuing orders to take property at this point.
No, absolutely. And a big part of it, like I've had clients ask too, like how are papers getting served, right? Like how are legal service, what we would call service and notice, being issued because of this shelter in place, or, this social distancing that everybody is trying to adhere to. I would tell you that, everything is really going electronically. So in what we're talking about, it's under the, the new rules of civil procedure, that is acceptable service via email a lot of times. And so we just want to make sure if you're getting any kind of legal documentation that's getting emailed to you, legal notice that's getting emailed to you, don't just ignore it, okay? Because we're telling you that the courts are still open and they're still available. There are a lot of things that can't happen right now, right? Like an eviction. But that doesn't mean there aren't other things that have legal implications that can affect you dramatically that can happen. So, don't be an ostrich. Don't put your head in the sand and think it'll be okay because nothing can happen. That's not true.
But there are some
And if you get something via email, contact
there
your
are
lawyer.
some exceptions to the eviction. I mean, they're very limited. It would be under the Supreme Court's looks like their fourth order. They were talking about not being able to do an eviction proceeding or get an order for a writ of possession until after the 26th of April. I'm guessing, based on the president's press conference the other day, where they're thinking this thing is going to go through at least the end of April. I'm thinking that's probably going to get extended, but at this particular moment in time, it's not until after April the 26th, and all the deadlines and things like that are told until after April the 19th. So, you've got until at least that time. If and the exceptions are if you're running criminal enterprise out of your rental out of your rented house or your rented apartment, you're involved in criminal activity, or you're an imminent threat. Let's say you're arming up for the apocalypse and shooting guns off and things like that. Those kinds of things will get you evicted under an emergency type of situation. But beyond that, if you're just a normal person just trying to get by the day to day, I don't think you have to worry about getting evicted at least until the end of April. But most of the time, landlords are being they're affected by this too, because obviously on the landlord side of the table, they've got potentially mortgages to pay or rent to pay to another, to a lien holder that's also being affected by this. So let's talk a little bit about the landlord side.
Yeah, obviously, if you've got a mortgage outstanding, you're not receiving rent payments that were normally covering that mortgage, the first thing you want to do is contact your mortgage holder. There's a lot of flexibility that's being not necessarily dictated, but recommended at this point in the mortgage industry. So, a lot of them are trying to be understanding, meaning that they might be pushing, mortgage payments without penalties and interest to, a month down the road, or adding to the term of the loan to give you an opportunity to not have to pay because you don't have that income. But none of this is going to happen automatically. So
Though the ostrich defense doesn't work in this particular situation.
Now, absolutely got to reach out to the people who are, in the position of lien holder or mortgage holder, and let them know what's going on, and really work through those.
And if you're a landlord, I mean, most landlords are reasonable people, but you're not going to be able to evict somebody during this crisis unless there's criminal activity or some sort of imminent threat or emergency going on the property. So in most normal instances, that's not going on. But on the landlord side, yeah, I mean, you're in a tricky position too, because everything kind of filters up. But yeah, I mean, getting in contact with those lien holders is probably the safest course of action, because I guarantee you're not the first phone call.
No, absolutely not. And not only that, but if you're looking at your real property, your apartment complex or your duplex or whatever it is, your house that you're renting out, and you're not getting funds in, and you have concerns about what may be transpiring. So to Brian's point, if you feel that it's a criminal enterprise, then you obviously have to bring in law enforcement officials. Now, I will tell you that there have been some concerning types of statements made by police forces that are feeling the strain of either, sick, police officers who are not showing up to work, or heavy volumes of calls, because obviously they're unprecedented. I would say Dallas County is one of those. They put out a notice that said, hey, you know what, we're not going to respond to any type of theft call. So in that, we've done in the past podcasts about if you're a firearm owner, how to be careful about that. When it's going to be available. I'll tell you, these are the kinds of things that you really want to be cognizant of. Self-help is definitely not going to be something I would recommend for a landlord at this point, because things are very tense. Things are super stressful, and you may not normally have the availability to have a police officer out there to help you kind of effectuate something like that. You may not get that type of support.
And the best advice for you is pay attention to what's going on. Check your news sources, check reliable news sources, find out what's going on in your local area, and use a reasonable mind and protect your family and stay safe. I mean, nobody's going to fault you in this particular situation for protecting your family or staying safe. The best thing you can probably do at this point in time is probably stay home. I know we got school running out of my house. We got all kinds of things. We got school, we got PE, we got everything running out of my house right now. School, work, everything you can think of. But nobody's going to fault you for doing what you think is best for your family during this time. This is, like we said, is completely unprecedented. Heck, and most of these things you have. Let's talk a little bit about civil stuff. You have a car loan, or you have a some other kind of loan, or you have a mortgage that's due and you've lost your job, or whatever the case may be. Call your lenders and talk to them, because most of them are getting help from the government, and most of them are taking unprecedented action too to help out people during this during this crisis. I mean, if you're a person who normally wants to, pay their bill 2 days before the due date or 10 days before the due date or whatever, because you're, a responsible person and everything like that, stuff like this happens that people can't control, and they're helping, they're there to help, but you got to let them know what's going on, because I know almost every car dealer and every car loan is offering unprecedented, help during this time, whether they're adding it onto the back of your loan or whatever the case may be. They are trying to help during this crisis. So, and there is help available, and like I said, if you're having a real trouble and a real concern, I think getting the advice of competent counsel is absolutely critical.
Without a doubt, Brian. And what you have to remember along that same line is, look, stressful situations, they can bring out the best or the worst in people, right? And, you are going to be judged, the decisions that you make right now. It's always hindsight, when you're Monday morning quarterbacking, it's really easy to look back and apply very stringent, rules and regulations from a judge's perspective. And so you just want to take the high road, to your point. If you can take the high road and be flexible and give some deference to the people that are around
Definitely.
you and be kind, then I would recommend that you do it. And if you need that kindness, it's okay to ask for it. And if somebody's not willing to give it to you, they're treating you, with, a lack of respect, or they're just not really taking into account your very difficult situation, then that is absolutely when you need a lawyer. Guys, I mean, look, there's a reason that, all these people went to school for the most part. It's to help people. And in a situation like this, if you need help and you can't figure your way out of it on your own,
so we did promise you some discussion about the criminal side of this. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Jonathan Bailey, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the criminal side of this thing. So give us a little bit of time, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Top Texas Lawyers podcast. Sam and I are happy that Jonathan Bailey has decided to join us today. He's a criminal attorney who practices out of Dallas and Denton counties, but he can do criminal cases basically all over the state. So he's with the Law Offices of J.B. Bailey, and he's here to talk to us about this COVID-19 crisis and what's going on in the criminal world. So we have a couple of questions for you. Our first question is, if you're a guy who's let's say you get arrested, situations.
Well, it's been a real challenge. I know that a bunch of us have got a special motion that we can file for an expedited arraignment to get people out on bail due to the COVID-19. That a lot of us have been using to get people out quickly. Unfortunately, if it's an assault family violence case, there's a mandatory 24-hour hold, but we still want to get you out as quickly as possible.
And what are they?
Go ahead.
What are they seeing down at the courthouses with criminal cases and things like that?
Well, at the courthouse, they're letting us pass the case or get a new court date remotely for the most part. It's only essential items that we're down at the courthouse for right now.
So you had to go down to the court last week to do some kind of a plea or something. What was that situation like?
The courthouse looked like a ghost town. I was actually shocked that the judge had us down there because most of the judges didn't. But there's still some outliers who have decided that they want to, drag everyone down to the courthouse, and in spite of all the warnings and the shelter order in place. For people that are currently in custody, they're trying to release people fairly rapidly.
So we've got, I know down here in Harris County, we've got our first reported cases of COVID-19 at the jail. I'm not sure how it is down up in your neck of the woods. Do you know any information on that?
I have been keeping track of it statewide for the most part, mainly in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and also I look to Houston because the major metropolitan cities can kind of tell us what's going on. What's going on is they're trying to release everyone from the jails, not the prisons. And there's a difference. The jail is just at the county level with, usually it's either temporary holding or very, very minor offenses. Anyone that's nonviolent, meaning, a marijuana case or DWI case or just something kind of petty where they're not really a threat to society. They're letting everyone out as rapidly as possible to try and slow the spread of this, virus that's going on.
So-
And the prison. Go ahead.
John, are you seeing that like the bail amounts are being substantially reduced as you're getting these hearings?
They are. We're getting a lot of reduction in bails. Some of the counties, like Dallas, have moved almost exclusively to a personal recognizance bond situation where they even take the bondsman out after you get arraigned at the jail. They're going to they're taking everyone, giving them what's called a personal recognizance bond, and just releasing them. That's happening a lot in Tarrant County also.
So are they even doing arrests for? Have you had to deal with any cases with people violating these curfews or anything like that yet?
Not yet. There's a statute in place that allows for up to $1,000 fine and up to 6 months in jail if you're caught, violating the statute. It's a state emergency order violation. I can anticipate that if this stay-at-home order is around much longer, that we're going to have quite a few of those cases coming about. If law enforcement tells you to go home, don't argue with them. Go home.
Right.
That's
Absolutely good advice.
so.
What
Yeah,
are you
we're.
seeing?
Go ahead.
What are you seeing on the trial settings? I mean, like obviously on the family and civil side, we're seeing obviously these are all getting kicked down the road. But I know with those timelines, are you seeing those extended? Or jury trials like being pushed out? Or are you guys considering or contemplating other things?
Well, they're pushing the jury trials back. They're actually having pleas that happen. If you're set for a plea, some of them they're doing via Skype or Microsoft Team or Zoom, any of those interactive social media mediums, and they're scheduling people in. They've got to move people as a result of the constitutional violations out of the jail. So mainly the people that are getting to see the judge, whether it be live or by video or telephone, are mainly people that are currently incarcerated. People out on bond. Most of the courts are just pushing the case back, kind of like you said they were in the civil courts.
Okay, so what does a person do if they find themselves in the unenviable position of being arrested during this problem?
Well, I would rapidly call a lawyer, because depending upon the county, there are some things that we can do to get you out more rapidly. I know that in Collin County, we have, if it's a small misdemeanor, there's set bail amounts, and if the lawyer goes down and files a writ of habeas corpus, they can do what's called a writ bond and get you out without even having to be arraigned by a judge, which is really nice, because then it's just process in, process out time, and you don't even see the main part of the jail.
So you're seeing where you would get hung up would be in situations where there's a violent offense, or you're being charged with some kind of a family violence situation or something like that, correct?
Absolutely. That all the sheriffs that I've talked to a couple of them, and people at the sheriff's office, they're in most of the counties, they're under orders to get rid of everyone that's not a threat to society and try to reduce the numbers in the county jails. But just I've had people ask me the question, are they, should we be worried they're letting everyone out of jail? And I would say no.
Okay. And what about situations? Are you seeing people getting arrested for petty offenses, or getting arrested for things like theft and different things like that? Are the police even responding to those calls at this point, or what's going on with those types of things?
Most of the police are less aggressive with petty theft, petty marijuana offenses, things of that nature. They're trying to conserve the resources towards more violent offenses.
Gotcha. So if somebody has a criminal issue and they need to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, you can either go to my website, which is the Law Office of J.B. Bailey, or you can just call me directly at 469-248-6430.
Okay, and you've got a website. So and Jonathan's been practicing criminal law for almost 20 years. Maybe over 20 years at this point. My days are running together. but he's got a tremendous amount of experience in both felony and misdemeanor, and he's your go-to guy if you have a criminal issue you need dealt with.
Yeah, don't wait. Give him a call.
Well, Mr. Bailey, I appreciate your time coming on with us today.
Yep, great insights.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, all right. There you heard it. We've covered the civil side, the criminal side, and the family side of this, of what's currently going on. And we think we've got you pretty much up to date with respect to this COVID-19 crisis. But like, Sam and I have both reiterated on this podcast before, the important thing right now is that you keep yourself safe and your family safe, and the county or state authority issues an order, follow it. And get yourself medical treatment if you need it, because this is nothing to joke around about.
No, I agree. If you can stay home and stay safe, that's what we want. If you need help, we've heard it from multiple people and different sources, but don't hesitate to reach out and, try to, rely on the goodness of people. But if you need help beyond that and you need a good lawyer, then don't hesitate to reach out for competent counsel. They're there for that reason. The courts are still available and accessible if necessary, and you can get things done.
And we thank you again for your time today, and we will be following up with you shortly. And it looks like this stuff is changing by the hour, because I just got an update that the school's closed until the first part of May now. So as it's a good example, because this stuff changes by the hour, and so it's important. And like I said, if you need help, there are plenty of resources available to help you. If you need a good attorney, don't wait. Go ahead and reach out. Most attorneys are doing teleconference or Skype or phone consultation. You can get that help. That help is available. And by all means, just please stay safe. That's all I got.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Sam. Thank you so much.
All right, you too.
Bye. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the Top Texas Lawyers podcast. If you would like a consultation with either Bryan or Sam, please call 1-888-981-7509 or visit us on the web at astxlegal.com. Once again, that's astxlegal.com. Thank you very much.